CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman is here to discuss it all with us. And again, Rikki, this is the first verdict handed down in connection to Freddie Gray's death. We did see a hung jury in the first trial of the 6 officers who did go to trial. Is there a sense then of a precedent being set here, or as perhaps we heard some initial reaction today, this was simply a rendering of these facts as it pertained to Officer Nero?
This is only a rendering of these facts as they pertain to Officer Nero. The fact that there was a not guilty on all counts for Officer Nero has nothing whatever to do with the cases of the other 5 officers. This is a judge verdict. There was no jury in this case. The evidence against Officer Nero, it seems almost by every lawyer and representative connected to this case on either side, that the evidence was thin when it came to a level of culpability for Officer Nero. Remember this, Officer Nero's involvement is at the very beginning. He's there at the time of the stop and the initial arrest. The evidence of assault, which carried a 10-year penalty, was having to do with your basic police procedure duties, that is, to cuff him, to put him into the van. So in terms of the ultimate death and what went on in that ride in the van, you have other officers who will be tried on those facts. The next trial is the big one. The next one is Officer Goodson. He is the driver, and he is the one and the only one who is charged with murder.
The secondary murder charge he faces. And again, you mentioned it. We heard Billy Murphy today, a family lawyer for the Gray family, discuss it, saying that the family had not been looking for any specific decision, just a fair rendering of the facts. And as we did see, for all you could be forgiven if you hearing Billy Murphy speak, if you thought he was in fact a defense lawyer for Officer Nero himself. You also mentioned the decision then made by Nero's defense team, who we did not hear from, to have this heard by a judge as opposed to a jury. What went into that?
In the public statement of the lawyers who represent Officer Nero was that they were looking for a swift resolution, that is, guilty or not guilty, and that's in fact why they chose a judge. If you recall, the first trial of Officer Porter wound up with a hung jury. The reality of the situation is this. What they were looking for on behalf of their client, Officer Nero, was a trial that they felt was free of any potential prejudice that might come from feelings of members of the community, both in favor of the police and also in favor of Freddie Gray and doing justice for Freddie Gray. There were so many questions in Officer Porter's situation as to why that jury would either feel strongly for acquittal or strongly for conviction. So here, they took a chance. It is not always a good idea to go before a judge, especially a judge who has to appear again before the public as they would do in Maryland. But Judge Barry Williams is known as a very, very fair judge. And we haven't, to date, heard one word from anyone that's in a critique of the integrity of this jurist.
Congressman Elijah Cummings had come out in support of Barry Williams, again, prior to the verdict being rendered. And we did as well hear the Gray family attorney, Billy Murphy, saying that he saw nothing in the acquittal that would be disqualifying, in his opinion, of Judge Williams hearing the other cases. It's believed, though, if the reaction from the police union, for instance, is believed, that there was a political rush to justice here. Does that seem to hold added weight with the decision we see today?
I don't think so. I think that this is a judge who, by all accounts, tries things by the numbers, as I would say, that he does it fair and square. He knows the rules of evidence, knows the rules of procedure, asked a lot of questions of both sides' lawyers during the course of this case. And what he could not get past was that if, in fact, you had an arrest that wasn't fully based on probable cause, If you cuff someone at that point, does that constitute an assault? Is it misconduct of an officer if there really isn't full-blown probable cause? And these were troubling questions to him. I think that what people best remember is that there are other officers here who are charged with much more serious offenses. It does not mean that they are going to get acquitted. At the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was a rush to judgment that shoved this case down the public's throat, as the police union has said in its press release. It was fast. There is no question. I think that is indisputable, much faster than we see in other places. But there was a grand jury that sat here. It wasn't just the prosecution. I can argue this case on both sides, yes, but the reality is that we are in a process now. These defendants, one by one, will be tried in Baltimore County. That was a major decision on Barry Williams' thought process as well, that in the city of Baltimore, that these cases were not going to another venue. That was a big decision that many people felt was in favor of the prosecution. In this case, it did not work out that way.
Another peripheral involvement, perhaps, on the part of Officer Nero, then, looking ahead, then, to the next case on the docket, that of Cesar Goodson. You mentioned it, it's the big one.
It is the big one.
If you will. And, at this point, perhaps using this as something of a guide, what can we expect?
Well, Officer Goodson is, in fact, the driver of the car. And so one of the things that came out in this trial, the trial of Officer Nero, was that it wasn't Officer Nero's responsibility to put Freddie Gray in his seatbelt, but perhaps it should have been that of the driver. So then you want to know also, will the prosecution be able to prove up how long was that ride? What happened during that ride? Was Freddie Gray asking for help? Was he protesting the posture that he had been put in the back of the van? Officer Goodson has a much more difficult case ahead of him.
Legal analyst Rikki Klieman, as always, we appreciate the time.
Thanks, Josh.